and how can you quantify to the people holding the purse strings that you now need somebody else to build that up again. So we wanted to move towards this more codified structure that would be somewhat resilient to personnel changes. And as it turns out, just through the comings and goings of working life, that has been tested quite significantly by the successful handover of liaison roles that we've um, needed to do because of staffing changes on our side. And in fact, although we couldn't have predicted this, it happened around some of our largest areas of liaison. And it was really useful to be able to say to the schools involved, well, you were working with this person around this. This is the new liaison. This is the new person who slots in like that. Of course, behind the scenes, it's not as simple as that, but for the school, it could be as simple as that. This is the new version of that person. And again, that's key at just keeping that relationship going. It also means that when people are going to move on to other roles or going to take a break that's planned, at least you can build into the work some time for handover, and you can emphasize the importance of having this culture of handover, um, which really kind of leads on to the second point, this idea that we're the sort of the stewards of the relationships that we build. We don't own them. They're not ours personally. Of course, we have personal relationships with people, and that's important. But you're building that relationship in a working capacity for the centre. You're representing the centre. You're representing your in-sessional colleagues, the in-sessional provision, and the expectation is that you will be prepared when the time comes to hand that over to the next person. You've nurtured it, you've cared for it, and a part of that care is handing it over to the person who will come next. And we hope that that just has a little bit of sort of future planning in people's minds. So we make sure that at the end of every year, end of every module role, we encourage people to write um, write reports that have in mind this idea of handover, even if in the end they're just kind of handing back to themselves, but constantly thinking, okay, what about the next person who has to pick this up? Things like boards, committees, networks, very time consuming, but they really do help us. And this idea of the many networks that we really do not not just need to focus on building our relationships with disciplinary colleagues, but also with the wider teaching and learning team. Some quick reflections before we have some questions, maybe on what comes next. We do need to revisit the role description, and we probably do need some more formalized CPD around the role. Thinking about some of those ideas that were on the Padlet. I've been asked, as we're all asked, so I've been asked as the program director to be doing more around measuring the impact of in-sessional. And as a part of that, it would be useful to be able to try to capture the impact of the liaison roles. And we can do that, in fact. We can point to provisions that have arisen specifically through identifying needs at those boards of studies and then responding to them. And we can also track changes in provisions that have arisen through this liaison model. So we do have more tangible evidence of at least let's say developments that have happened since we instituted this model. Not, we can never say they never would have happened without it, but we do have some things that have taken place. As ever, we're left of, because of course we're left with yet another challenge coming down the track. I mentioned that this model helped us to resist attempts to do away with non-credit modules, which were key to our provision. The next challenge coming down the track for us is a centralised workload model. We currently don't have that at the University of Reading, so we have our own local school workload model, and we've been able to, not perfectly, but to a far greater extent than we had before, we've been able to get this liaison work into our workload model. So like I said before, a full basket's 0.25 of a role. Part of a basket is XYZ of a role, and attach a specific number of hours to it. However, these liaison roles, because they don't exist in other schools, they are non-standard, and they, in the new workload model, how are we exactly going to account for this? So there's always a challenge. And again, ultimately, that challenge has arisen because we're an academic school, and we'll have to fit into this new workload model in some respect. If we were a service, that wouldn't happen. Not that I'm saying that I don't think we should be a school, but it's just another useful example of how it's not all advantageous. So yes, this is really where we are at the moment. Thank you very much for the sharing on the Padlet, which has been really useful for me as I move into these next challenges. If anybody does have any questions in the chat, or anything they'd like to add, please let me know. And yeah, thank you very much, everybody, for your attention and for the discussion as well.
And many thanks to yourself, Sarah, for a great talk. Just great talk.